Hey everybody, Father Shawn here. This is the Shawn the Baptist Show for April 23rd. We are Thursday in the second week of Easter, Thursday in the week after the octave of Easter, Thursday in the sixth week of pandemic time. Sorry we're on a little bit later tonight, some little glitches beforehand, but this may end up being a short show, but wanted to get this out here for all the faithful listeners. Probably won't have as many people on tonight since we're a little bit off the normal schedule. But if you'd like to join us in live, feel free to go ahead and connect, and we'll take your questions tonight. And we had a great time last night. Actually, lots of good people asking questions and interacting. So I love to see that. After all, that is kind of the reason of doing something live. I'm happy to do whatever, but I could just record it if there's not going to be interaction. So I do like to be able to go live and get your feedback and hear your questions. So no, we're getting started a little bit late tonight. So I do see that we had some people jump on late. So this will be probably a short show tonight if there aren't a whole lot of questions. But one of the things that I'd like to maybe look at a little bit tonight is that it is the feast of Saint George. Saint George died probably in the early 4th century, maybe 309, 320, something like that, under the Emperor Diocletian, who famously persecuted a lot of the Christians. A lot of times in the martyrology that I've mentioned, the martyrs were put to death during the persecution of Diocletian, and Saint George is one of those who professed his faith as a Christian and was put to death for that. He is famous for his patronage of England. He is the patron of England, and he is famous for killing a dragon. So if you ever see a saint that is killing a dragon, okay, two things to think of. Does the saint have wings? Okay, if the saint has wings and is killing a dragon, that is probably Saint Michael the Archangel, who is actually killing a little demon that sometimes looks like a dragon. If the person is riding a horse and is slaying a dragon, that's Saint George. Okay, and he is the patron of England and the patron of a lot of places. Actually, he's pretty famous. And tonight he's the patron of scouting. So I would like to maybe talk a little bit about that tonight. I am a longtime Boy Scout and do in fact love St. George, our patron. He's one of those saints that people debate about because he's such an early saint, and a lot of kind of legend almost grows around him. And by that I mean not that legend means false, but one of the things about modern day based saints is that we know who they are and that they exist, and we can go see their grave to this day. The grave of Saint George is actually near Tel Aviv in Israel to this day, at least one of the places that claim it. So St. George was an actual person. After Vatican II, in some cases they removed some of the saints from the calendar because, like, hey, we don't really know if this person existed. Well, St. George definitely existed, and we at least believe that we have his tomb near Tel Aviv in Israel. So yes, St. George is a real person. Did he slay a dragon? Okay, maybe. Like we talk about. Certainly, St. Patrick driving the snakes out of Ireland. Well, there weren't any snakes native to Ireland, so it was kind of a metaphorical kind of talk about the driving out heresy and things like that. So what does it mean to say St. George killed a dragon? You can take it or leave it. The church has no official teaching on dragon slaying. Now, I've read some good articles that say that, hey, dragons in scripture, they really exist, this is what they are, things like that. So if you want to study about dragons, knock yourself out. Maybe we can talk about dragons later. Okay, so for those of you just joining, yes, we're talking about dragons, kind of. We're talking about Saint George, who is supposedly known to have killed a dragon. And I see some of our normal people joining now, so if you're just joining, sorry for the late start. I was on an important call and could not get away to start the Shawn the Baptist show at our normal time. So welcome to the normal attendees, and perhaps others will follow along later after the recording is out there. But the main thing that I put out about St. George is that he is the patron saint of scouting. In one of my other jobs, my other job, I suppose, for the Archdiocese, I am the scout chaplain. I have been a scout for 33, going on 34 years now. So I love the scouts, and as you know, spend a lot of my time working with the scouts. And sadly, in the days of Zoom, I ask you to pray for all our scouts. We should be out camping at this point, and it is gorgeous out tonight. Tonight would be an incredible night to be out camping. If I were a scout, I might just take my tent and pitch it out in the yard by the church or something. Even, I don't know. This would be a gorgeous night to be camping, and we can't. So pray for your little scouts who would love to be out camping, and we can't be. We're Zoom calling, and scouts are doing their meetings by Zoom, and everything's happening by Zoom. And we used to make fun of the Girl Scouts, colloquial for camping in malls. Scouting by Zoom is just for wimps, and it's all we got right now. So pray for the scouts. One of the things that I always like to point to, the scouting movement was founded by Lord Robert Stevenson Smythe Baden-Powell in 1907, and then scouting came to the United States in 1910, and has been going ever since. And it's one of those things that started as a way when Baden-Powell founded the Scouts. He saw that the military officers in the British Army, where he was a leader, that they were very ill prepared in basic skills like surviving in the field and tying knots even, and things that you don't think of, but your life ends up depending upon it when you're a soldier. And he saw that the adult soldiers were just not ready on basic kind of things, and so he founded the scouting program for boys. His book in which he started this was called The Handbook for Boys, and he really started it to train the young people in the basic skills that you need to survive. And not just to be in the military, of course, but really character building, life skills, leadership. And these are the same principles that go into scouting to this day. I mean, people think of scouts and they think of camping or helping old ladies across the street. Well, scouts has always been about character building, okay? And I see like Ed Hubert just jumped on. Speaking of scouting, I mean, I see Ken Bauer and others, some pretty famous scouts from my time as a scout. So scouts has always been much, much more than a camping club. And I think that's where people get us wrong as scouts. Sometimes people think, well, you scouts, you're just like you go camp in the woods, whatever. Well, in scouts, everything, there are methods and aims. So the aims of scouting, this is what we're trying to accomplish, like citizenship, character building, personal fitness. But then there's the way that we do it, the methods of scouting. Now, we've changed the language a little bit from aims and methods over the years. But, the camping, it's not the end. It's not an aim. The goal of scouting is not to make us good campers, okay? That's part of the trick as to how we get to the other things. You want to build leadership. You want to have good character. Well, camping is some of the way that we do that. And not just camping, being out, backpacking, and encountering the wilderness. And Eddie is saying it's a brotherhood, essentially. And today, even a sisterhood. That, you think about adults that do this too. Like, think of the Marine Corps. Okay, my best friend's a Marine officer. We look at the incredible camaraderie that there are amongst the Marines, because you're literally willing to go into battle and put your life on the line with these guys. Well, young men, we're talking teenagers here, don't do that, okay? We go into battle with scouts to battle largely ourselves. And the outdoors, the wilderness, is really just a place where we can, confront some of those things that every young man needs to confront. And today, of course, I mean young women too, but all societies especially had kind of a rite of passage of this is how you go from being a boy to being a man. And they're tests that you have to pass. And not so much tests imposed arbitrarily by the society, but basic tests that are almost inherent to our person. How do we go from being a dependent child that needs our mom and dad for protection and can't do anything on our own to being independent and self-reliant? How do we do that? Well, Scouts uses various methods to achieve that. And I'm gonna close my window here because I'm on the highway, and actually the police are across the road and they're practicing shooting things. So I don't want gunfire on the Shawn the Baptist show tonight. There we go. So when we get the Scouts outdoors in the wilderness, okay, I always talk about one of the great principles of Scouting, the way that we do things, is controlled failure, if I could call it that. And this is something that, especially today, is just sorely lacking. Letting kids fail. Okay? We do that all the time in the Scouts. In fact, that's one of the most important things we do, is we let the Scouts fail. Society today says, no, nobody fails. Everybody's a winner. Everybody gets a trophy. No. That's not real life. That's not Scouts. In Scouts, we let kids fail. So how do you learn responsibility? Well, let's say, you're going camping, and in Scouts we're divided into little patrols, and so each patrol will plan their food for the camp out, and they'll have to go get their own groceries and things like that. Okay, let's say you were in charge of, getting the ketchup and mustard or whatever, and you didn't. Your whole patrol is going to suffer. Now, are the leaders going to show up and say, hey, you can borrow our ketchup and mustard? That'd be the nice thing to do. Probably we're not. Probably we're going to say, yeah, you forgot your ketchup and mustard. That kind of sucks. You're going to have plain hot dogs or hamburgers or whatever. Maybe next time, you'll take some responsibility and see that failure of everyone carrying out their duty has real consequences that affects everybody. So we'll allow that. Oh, you didn't bring rain gear. Maybe you should have be prepared, as we say in the Scouts. Now I say it's controlled failure because we're never going to let the Scouts be in danger or hurt themselves much. That's another thing in Scouts. Falling down, scraping yourself, maybe even a broken bone every now and then. I don't know. And we obviously will do everything we can to avoid that. But, there's an old saying that, a ship is safe in the harbor, but ships aren't made for the harbor. They're made to go out, and it's the same with us. We're not made to be safe. We're made to go out, and I love that about Scouts. There's no reason to go out and sleep in the woods when you've got a perfectly good bed back home. Why carry all your stuff on your back? If you could just drive it there. Well, because Scouts like challenges. We want to challenge ourselves. Noel Gardner is on, I see, one of my great Scouting friends. He says, you typically only do some of these things one time. Ask me how I know. Yeah, controlled failure. There are some things that the leaders just can't quite jump on in time, and Scouts like to experiment. And sometimes you learn by messing it up, and as Noel says, sometimes you do that one time, and that's enough. I have lots of stories like that, and as do any Scouts. That's why whenever Scouts get together and can talk, there's always good Scouting stories. And that's one of the great things about being a Scout leader. Although I'm not that old, I've been a Scout for going on 34 years, so I could say back in my day, or we did this, and I remember to this day my first camp out as a Boy Scout. It was the 1988 Fall Cod District Camporee, and it rained 3 days straight. I was in my tent watching the rain come through the side of my tent. The mud was 6 inches deep. I'll never forget it. I don't think my mom will either, because she had to do the laundry and clean up after that. And I see Ed Martin's on from the National Catholic Committee on Scouting, one of my colleagues there. Good to see him. And Ken and Patty Billinger pray for their son Blaine, Eagle Scout, who It reconnection successful. Okay, good. So if I lost anybody there, something happened with our internet. So I was giving a shout out to Ken and Patty Billinger and their son Blaine, Eagle Scout, um, and Ed. There I see Ed. He likes the video. And there we go. And Anthony Escobar also joining. Look at all these scouts on. He's an executive now down in Texas, Cato Area Council, I think. So we got a lot of good scouts on tonight. So if you've got any good scout stories you want to talk about, let me know. And Peggy says she was a campfire girl about 55 to 60 years ago. I remember the year we all ended up with ticks after waking up in our sleeping bags, no tents. Yeah, that sounds intense, Peggy, or not in this case. Sure, those are the kind of stories I'm talking about. But especially as the scouts get older, one of the great things about scouts is we one of the goals, so one of the aims I was talking about, or key principles, is leadership. Okay, well, we don't think today about maybe a 12-year-old showing leadership. Like, isn't that for adults? Well, in scouts, 12-year-olds show leadership. In fact, it's required for rank advancement. Maybe they are their patrol leader. So they're the head of, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys. And they learn what it's like to have to be in charge. And so right away, we teach scouts a lesson that, that adults would learn. What's the difference between being a big boss leader or a servant leader? A leader is one that says, I'll show you the way, not that's the way, go do it. A leader shows the way. And so basic kind of leadership principles that have worked in the Boy Scouts since the time of Baden-Powell. And as I said today, we share that in the Boy Scouts, the BSA, Scouts BSA with young women as well. Same kind of leadership principles, maybe taught and experienced in a different way. Now, and Eddie's on here again, and he mentioned Philmont. So I mentioned backpacking. Why take, why carry it on your back? That doesn't even sound like fun to a lot of people. Couldn't I just drive with my car? Well, you could, but there's a certain satisfaction, first of all, and there's some places you can only get to by backpacking. So if you want to go backpacking, a lot of times part of the joy is there are no roads, and so at Philmont, kind of the secret is that there are roads that go everywhere, but it's very well designed. So if you're backpacking, I mean, most of the territory that you're going through at Philmont is not on a road. It's not accessible by roads. It's through beautiful ponderosa pine forest and meadows that there are no roads. The only way to get there is by foot. So there's that satisfaction. But then there's just the satisfaction of challenge. The idea that, okay, anybody can drive up stuff in their car and say, hey, I packed everything I needed and I put it in the back of a U-Haul. All right, that's not exactly even camping. We call that car camping or something like that. If you're gonna go backpacking, say at Philmont, now you've got a chance. If you're gonna go backpacking at Philmont, speaking of Philmont, okay, we have to stop and give a serious shout out because Roger Hoyt is on. Number one, the head of all Philmont Scout Ranch. So we'll have. I actually debated when I was going to talk about scouts. Should I have a guest on? And should I get Roger and Diana on the Hoyts down there? They are great Kansas City hometown scouters. In fact, let me see if I can even find. I bet I've got on my computer my staff picture from Camp Nash from 1997 with Roger in it. He was my camp director when I was the lakefront aquatics director. Noel Gardner, who I mentioned before, was on that staff. So let's just I will work on pulling this up so you can see me and Roger when we were on staff together at Camp Nash here in the Heart of America Council. Let's see where even save that. Ah, I've got it. All right, I will pull this up. Okay, and voila. There you go. This is the 1997 Camp Nash staff. Let's see if I can zoom that in for you a little bit so you can see Roger and myself there. See if I can blow it up. Not easy to blow this thing up because it's an image that I scanned in. So let's try this. There you go. All right, so I'm just off center there behind Jeff Day, the program director, and Kevin Stilkelman, and there's Roger and Britt Davis right in the second row from the top, and Roger is he was the best camp director I ever had, and I think I'm safe there because none of the other camp directors I had are on here, but it was incredible. I loved working with Roger that summer as the aquatics director, and he is the camp director, and it was great to be back with him last summer at Philmont, and maybe, Roger, I'll have you on sometime, and as Eddie says, looking forward to seeing you this summer. All the paperwork is in, I'm hired, and they pushed the date a little bit, but as I'm said on here, pray for your scouts, because this is just awful to be cooped up inside and not camping right now, and I know a lot of the staff is supposed to be arriving down at Philmont, and it's been delayed, and boy, I hope we get to have summer. We wiped out the whole summer with a fire a couple years ago, and it was terrible. And so last summer we recovered, and it would be a shame to lose another summer. So we hope that doesn't happen. But as I was saying about Philmont, really one of the key things about this is that scouts are always looking for a greater challenge. Okay, you got to be an older scout, and you've done it. You've done the camping. You go to the same place. You go to the lake, whatever. All right, you think you're good. Let's put everything you need on your back for 10 days. Okay, and 10 days is it's a good length of a trek because it gives you time to bond as a crew. So crew is typically 10 people, maybe two adult advisors, and then you face more of these challenges. Scouts are always looking for what's the next challenge, what's the next best thing, and Philmont is kind of a bit of the pinnacle of that, where you're out 10 days backpacking, everything you need on your back, and I'd like to say that it's one of the reasons probably why I'm a priest to this day is because of some of my experiences at Philmont. I'll never forget my summer out there. It was I was out there, my first summer there was 96, 2006, 10 years later with the St. George Trek. I was a seminarian at the time, leading a crew through Philmont, and I remember I was debating, am I supposed to be a priest or not? I credit scouting with putting a lot of that kind of service orientation in my mind. And there I was, about halfway through the trek, and I was really loving it. But I was wondering, could I be a priest? Could I leave everything behind, as Jesus asks us to be as priest? And could I do that? And I worried that maybe I would be sad. If Jesus wanted me to give up a bunch of stuff, I would do it. But would I be sad? And so there I was at Philmont, halfway through my trek, and I remember we were going down to one of the staff camps called Cypher's Mine. And they've got a great kind of evening program there. The staff is super musical and really talented, and put on a great evening campfire program. And I remember I got in there earlier in the afternoon, and we got our camp set up, and it started to rain. And it does that at Philmont. It's in the mountains of northern New Mexico, and so afternoon rain is not uncommon. But we were set up, we were ready, and it started to rain, and I was sitting on the front porch, the staff cabin at Cypher's Mine. And so that the staff that live at these backcountry camps, often they have no electricity. At least they didn't in that day. Now there's some solar a lot of places. But this particular place, they had, candles for their lights. They had a wood burning stove for heat and cooking. And I realized those college kids basically live out there all summer in a way that people couldn't imagine to this day. What do you mean? No cell phone, no electricity, and they were, and they liked it, uh, and wanted to go back again and again. And so that struck me. And then as it's raining, I'm sitting on the porch at Cypher's Mine, and a staff member pulls out a guitar, and then someone grabs a banjo and just starts up singing, and the staff comes along, and there was not much else to do because it was raining, and we just sang songs sitting on the front porch for, I don't know, about an hour while the rain hit the roof on top. And here's the thing. I sat there and I realized I am happy. I am as happy as I could imagine myself being, and giving stuff up. I don't have anything. Okay, everything I need is on my back, and I've carried it for the last 7 days. These staff are out here all summer. They've got candles and a wood burning stove, and we're sitting on the porch playing songs on a banjo and a harmonica, and I am happy. And it really just kind of touched me at that moment to know that you don't have to have a lot of stuff, I guess, to be happy. And it really, I think, kind of helped me in my heart to say, you know what, I can be a priest. I can leave stuff behind, because stuff isn't going to make you happy. It's that being in touch with God and a purpose for your life. And so we colloquially refer to Philmont as God's country. But the thing that really gets me is all of the staff that are out there. Each of the cabins have a sign that simply says, "Change lives." Every day as the staff gets up, as the Rangers head out to take a new crew, everybody passes by a sign that says, "Change lives." Philmont certainly does that, and I think Scouts does that. It certainly did it for me. I think of how many lives have been changed by Scouts for the better. It's amazing to think. And so pray for the Scouts. Obviously, there's been a bit in the media about going through a tough time of some bankruptcy restructuring and things. To add coronavirus on top of that right now, I'm praying for Roger and the folks at Philmont, and that's where a lot of my charitable contribution goes. I like to give specific things, and so to support the Philmont Staff Association. And I've done a lot of things in scouting, and one of the proudest things in my scouting career that I look at now is I'm a proud member, a life member of the Philmont Staff Association. I'd been to Philmont before. I had hiked several treks. I'd been to the training center, but I was really, really touched and honored to serve on the staff last year and get that Philmont arrowhead patch that says staff on it. And I am now a life member of the Philmont Staff Association. And so I hope to be back there this summer. And my goodness, we are in the presence of practical scouting royalty tonight. Not only do we have number one, Roger Hoyt, we've got number two, Steve Nelson, the assistant at Philmont. So this is incredible. I mean, we should just do an all Philmont show, and I'll zoom in Roger and Steve, and I probably a lot of the staff would maybe even like to see that. So Roger, Steve, I'll be with you, and it would be great to have a little update on how are things looking for the summer, because I know, like myself, as all staff are kind of worried about what scouting looks like at Philmont this summer, and what summer looks like everywhere. I mean, everything's being canceled. There's a lot of mourning and grief going on as things get canceled. So we're talking about St. George tonight, the patron saint of scouting, and I haven't talked a whole lot about St. George because I know a lot more about scouting today than I knew as St. George as our patron. But one of the beautiful things that we do, I'm on the National Catholic Committee on Scouting, and so every other year, basically, the National Catholic Committee on Scouting, we sponsor a trek at Philmont, and we call it the St. George Trek after our patron. And we get like crews of 12, so 10 scouts and then 2 advisors, where each of those advisors is like a bishop, a priest, or a seminarian. As I said, I was blessed to be an advisor on one of the St. George treks, and supposed to have a St. George trek this summer. I don't know. Well, one of the things kind of up in the air. So I have found that scouting and my Catholic faith go together just so much that there's a good reason why we call Philmont God's country. But it's not just Philmont. Philmont is kind of like a pinnacle experience for scouts. It's that's sometimes and often a once in a lifetime experience for people. The real business of scouting takes place at a weekly troop meeting, at a patrol meeting where 5 or 6 boys get together and try to tackle some project. That's where it starts, and you learn how to do that as a 10, 11-year-old, and then you become a leader, and then you're advancing and you're learning how to show more leadership, and then places like Philmont or the Boundary Waters High Adventure Base, the Canoe Area Wilderness of Minnesota, or Sea Base down in Florida. We've got the Bechtel Summit out in West Virginia. These are the places where you go to really test yourself. I've always I think appreciated that about scouts. Society today is good about testing us in the area of sports. Everyone will compete for some kind of athletic thing, and that's great. In fact, it's a part of scouts. Physical fitness is one of the aims of scouting. But the thing that kind of gets me is I did lots of sports when I was a younger person. Believe it or not, I actually was a hurdle champion in junior high. Yeah, hurdles grew 9 inches when I got to high school. I didn't grow at all, so that was the end of my hurdle career. But, I did all kinds of sports, and truth be told, I don't do any of those anymore. I no longer am a basketball player or a baseball player, and I practiced really hard to be really good at that. I don't do things halfway, but I'm done with that. But 33 and some years later, I'm still scouting. The fact that I'm a priest and a scout, I was at Philmont last summer, and because I'm a priest and a chaplain, I had a 4-wheel drive vehicle and the keys to Philmont. I mean, it's every young scout's dream. Yeah, I almost get choked up thinking about it. I want to go back to Philmont, as we say out there. It is God's country, heaven on earth. HOME, heaven on earth, home. So I got off a little bit about Philmont there tonight, but this past week, in fact, Easter was the anniversary of my Eagle Scout award. And one of the things the Boy Scouts do now, they send me a little email on the anniversary of my my Eagle Scout, April 12th, 1992. And of all the things I would put on a resume if I have to fill something out, awards or whatever, Eagle Scout is on there. People know what that is, and I am looking forward to being at Philmont this summer at our local council camps where I serve as a chaplain. It's one of the good things we got going. If you want to know where are the bright spots for our youth, if you look at youth and wonder where they're going, what do we have, how do we make the future better? Scouts. Changes lives. Change lives. That's what it's about. It's not a camping club. You want to know what Scouts is about? Yeah, if you're 10 years old, I want to go camping. That's what it's about. I want to tie knots. I want to build bridges. I want to make towers. I want to light things on fire. I especially want to light things on fire. That's what it's about when you're 10. When I turned 12, I remember now my Scoutmaster asked me, how are you going to start giving back? And it was the first time I think that I ended up thinking about give back. I mean, what's that? And I've never really stopped. And from the time I became an Eagle Scout, I actually was filling out my Philmont application, a while ago, and it's like, list your scouting positions. Like that would be impossible. I mean, I'd have to create an entire webpage for that. So I just put, youth, 1986 to 1992 or 94, adult, 94 to present. That put all the positions in you want in between there. Still doing it. So if you're a young person playing a bunch of sports, doing a bunch of stuff, great. But maybe consider scouting too, because that's something that I don't do sports anymore, but I still do scouting. and it's way more than about camping right now for me. Camping gets a little bit harder as you get older, but the joys of what scouting really stands for gets a lot deeper in the heart. So I pray for that. Okay, let's see if there's any more questions. Katie Mackey says, an old eagle, May 1958. It took me years to realize the three things that form my beliefs and values: my parents, Catholic schools, and the Boy Scouts. Because a scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. That is the 12 points of the Scout Law. Baden-Powell came up with most of that, and we keep doing it. And Dan Bilvery says that I like the philosophy that scouting creates leaders. Camping is the primary, but not the only mechanism for gaining leadership experience. As I said, camping is one of the, what we used to call the methods of scouting. All those badges and stuff like that, it's all about the real end of things. We want to train leaders. We want to train people that will be strong men and women. As we say around Osceola parts here at our camp, a weak man is a victim of his environment, but a strong man is a victor in any environment. That's what we want to do in the Boy Scouts. We want to create victors who are not victims of their environment, but are strong victors. And that means we practice confronting obstacles. How many times adults fail today because we confront some obstacle and we get scared and we're like, oh no, this is harder than I thought it would be, and we run away. Boy Scouts don't do that. Okay? We might fail, we might suffer a little bit because we didn't plan well, whatever that is, but Scouts don't quit. We will be more prepared the next time. A failure is just a learning opportunity. And so that's very much what I learned as a young scout, and that's what I continue to practice to this day. Failures are learning opportunities. And so if you're down, don't stay down. Get back up. Keep going. You pitched your tent in a gully and it got all wet. All right, don't do that next time. Okay? That's what we do in the Scouts. I remember falling from some pretty great heights at times and realizing, okay, that knot didn't work. I should probably use a better knot next time. And I learned. Eddie says there's a reason that employees love it when Eagle Scout is on your resume. Yeah, they know that for a young person, you've been tested in leadership, teamwork, skill building, and if you got stranded in the wilderness, Scout would survive. I'll say that also if you get to the Lake of the Ozarks, like my family does, you will also be the one asked to tie the knots to secure the boat. So I do that as well. I use my aquatics instructor training, and I use fancy mooring hitch knot that you learn when you're working on rowing or small boat sailing merit badge. Things I learned then. And I am a proud recipient of the bugling merit badge. It is, to this day, the least earned merit badge every year, and it is the first merit badge on my sash. And it is the reason to this day that I play trumpet, because I wanted to be my troop bugler. True story. I've played all through the KU bands in college, played in orchestras and wind ensembles all over the place. I got started because I wanted to be bugler in my troop. True story. Steve says, Father Shawn, grateful for your example and amazing attitude in changing lives. God bless. So it's time to wrap it up. So with that, thanks to and Bill Guglielmi is on from the National Catholic Committee on Scouting, and Eddie's on. So to Roger and Steve from Philmont, maybe we can do a show together. And then all the other Scout leaders, good for you for seeing St. George, patron of Scouting today. I could talk about Scouting forever. So we're going to let that go. I ask you to say a prayer for your Scouts tonight, that we can quickly get back to outing, because Scouting is mainly outing. And I want to go back to Philmont. So I pray that happens this summer. All right. This has been the Shawn the Baptist Show on the Feast of St. George, April 23rd, patron of Scouting. Thanks for joining us in tonight. And until we meet again, may the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit come down upon you all and remain with you forever. St. George, pray for us. St. John the Baptist, pray for us. Good night, everybody.